Sean? Please don't video it.
No, you asked me to, miss.
I asked you to.
No.
Miss, I'm sending it to you.
No.
Come on, miss.
Why?
No. You got my permission. I'm the teacher, remember? I'm the teacher.
Right, tell you what, video it, but only he's the only one that is in it. You can't have anybody else in it.
Good.
Okay. Right, so Malcolm wants to record this for his own prosperity and to show people how great he is afterwards. Now, I want to make sure you got write London down the top of your exercise books, please. Please, I know lots of people are working on their own ones as well, but I'd like to focus fully on this one. Give you our full attention, because at the end of this, you should have just quickly revised all of the poems. So we went over very briefly, went over some stuff from my last lectures yesterday. Talked about the dramatic monologue of the Duke of Ferrara, and some context.
So to do it one-handed.
Is it? Oh, someone left it? Yeah, I just kept it. So I'm
recording already?
Yeah.
Stop it.
Okay. So don't forget, be nice on people when they're doing yours, because you want them to be nice when you're doing. So be nice to them when they're doing theirs, because you want them to be nice to you when you're doing yours. They don't have to. Not all of them. Okay. So just give me a little nod when you want them to go to the next page. Right. Right. When you're ready.
Wait. I need this, because I don't remember who the author is.
Okay, well, it's always a start.
At least she says it. Alright. London. Not the greatest poem, but it'll do. I would have chosen that. So, London, the capital of an empire that spread from the east to the west. A city that should be prosperous, beautiful, and not full of despair. But this man right here, William Blake, this man right here said something differently. See, he was an English poet that lived in London, in Soho, I believe. He was part of the Romantic age and visual arts. He lived most of his life in Soho, London. So he is the guy that knows most about London.
It's like a presentation.
When he was 14, he did poetry and painting. He writes it to show that the city is going to look into the future if the problems do not continue. I know, not solved. Means you can switch pages now. So the structure of the poem is a short poem, right? So it has 4 stanzas, which each has 4 lines. 2 lots of 4. They are written in iambic tetrameter and rhymed A-B-A-B. A-B-A-B, remember that. It's important. This means they can describe the poem as consisting of 4 iambic tetrameters quatrains. So it's narrated in first person. It's about walking through London and observing the miseries and misfortunes of the people that are living there. We have a person narrator whose observations are limited to what a person might actually hear and see on such a walk. This next page, please. Alright, we got the language next. So we got repetition. He uses repetition to convey the speaker's belief. The speaker's belief that everything is a possession of the ruling system and that no one is free. No one is free. The repetition of every stanza reinforces the universality of human misery. Everyone was miserable in this place that should be probably the least miserable place because it was the capital of an empire. It was constrained by this vision, as London's victims are by their manacles. Alright, got that? So now we got emotive diction. Whilst the speaker...
Dramatic pause.
Whilst the speaker observes neutrally, increasingly emotive terms are used to sum up the vision London presents.
Alright.
Woe becomes cry of fear, a cry that appalls, ultimately the curse that blasts the weeping infant. Now we got tangible misery. Notice the way in which intangible things in the third stanza become tangible. Tangible means you can touch it, I think.
Yes, it's fine.
The soldier's sigh becomes blood. The sweeper's cry, a black stain. Human responses of pain in this system taint or mark everything, spreading the contagion of captivity. And captivity, I mean. Alright, miss, next page, please. Now we got structure. I think we already did this, but we got structure, more structure. And versification. The poem has 4 quatrains with alternate lines rhyming. A, B, A, B. I told you to remember. Right. Repetition is the most striking formal feature of the poem, and it serves to emphasize inability to escape the de-encompassing effect of the mind-forged manacles. Blake frequently uses alliteration to link concepts. That's also important. That's important. The weak are in woe / misery. The mind is manacled. The sooty chimneys is equated with the blackening church. The soldier is not proud but sighs. The strength of the speaker's feeling is particularly conveyed by the plosive alliteration of palace and plagues, blood, blasts, blights. See how the letters are the same? Notice that. That's kind of important. So we got some pretty important quotes here, like appeals. It's an image of symbolic of the poet's negative view of the church. My guy was not very good with the church. So then we got charter, which is repetition, mapped, and restricted. Then we got fear. It's a motive vocabulary. Fear is not a very good thing, but it creates emotions. That's why it's a motive vocabulary. Between child and man, nobody's free in this city. That should be the capital of a great empire. Then we got blood, which is the image of blood on palace walls. Symbolizes soldiers' deaths and pose reflection of monarchy. Alright, next page, miss. Context and themes. This is important, you should know this. The main themes in London are the fallen world, political tensions, and social woes. The fallen world. The poem embodies Blake's Christian belief that humanity has fallen from a state of grace to a life of compromise and sin. Some of the other themes are power of man, power of nature, and pride. We got context. London during the 18th century was a city of contrasts. Rich, powerful people were in close proximity to the poorer classes, who had to fight to survive by any means necessary. There were few nights for lower class citizens, whilst the wealthy classes were able to use their power to further their own gains. Remember, this is the city of a powerful empire that should be one of the most prosperous cities in the whole world at this point, in the 18th century. 17th century. Why did I say 19th century? Why did I say 18th century? In 1789, the French Revolution happened. the lower classes rose up against the nobility and seized power, turning France into a republic. Alright, next page, miss. Alright, well, we've got a bit of an advertisement break. Remember London? Great city. Alright, link to other poems. This is important for your GCSEs. This poem for London can come up in your GCSEs, and you're going to have to link it to some other poems. Some of these poems are Exposure, Kamikaze, My Last Duchess, Prelude, Ozymandias, and Charge of the Light Brigade. This is because of power of man, the themes of power of man, power of nature, and pride. Go across the bottom. That's so far away. Yes, can you touch it? That's the last one. Okay, so in conclusion, this beautiful city called London, in which we live in today, you may be aware, is the capital of a nation that is an empire that spreads from the east to the west. From the east to the west. The sun never sets on England. Remember that. That's the thing. Yeah. Because there was stuff here and there was stuff here. It never set on it completely. Remember that. And this city that should be beautiful, prosperous, enchanting to many was quite the contrary. It was miserable and awful. Now, I got some sheets and stuff. You can have one. I can have one.
Mental. I'm going to be on that one.
Yeah, you can have another one.
Marks of weakness. There you go.
Both of you have one.
Yeah.
Alright,
Wait, no.
I actually need this because I don't know what the quotes are. So, you need to fill in these quotes. So the first quote is marks of weakness, and the things you need to do is marks of woe. Write that down.
Marks of weakness, marks of woe.
Yeah, marks of weakness, marks of woe. These are important quotes from this poem called London by William Blake. So now, in every where even is this? This isn't. I'm skipping this one. We're doing. Whoever gets 5 out of 7 right wins a cookie. Not from me though.
Not from you, check points.
Yeah, sure. And the cookie doesn't come from me. Alright. Next is every blackening church of all.
So you skip 2 then? Okay. Yeah, he said we're skipping those.
Yeah, I'm skipping all the ones I cannot be bothered to find.
Every
Every blackening church of Paul's. Alright, now we got number 5. And the hapless soldier's side runs in blood down palace walls. Yeah, of course. The first one. Alright. Marks of weakness, marks of woe.
And he skipped number.
Yeah, because he doesn't know.
And then number 4, every blackening church of Paul's. Number 5, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls.
When was the first one, marks of woe?
Yeah.
Is that marks?
Actually, that's it. I can't be asked to find anything.
Okay.
Exactly 15 minutes. Was it 15 minutes? 14, 40.
I'm so good at timing stuff.
That was beautiful, Mark.
No problem. I told you it was going to be good. I told you.
May 22nd. I now know London. It's a bad place, man.